Hello. In the next two videos, this one and the next one, we are diving into the big question of what gives life meaning. The first one, which you are watching now, is all about the meaning of life in general. The next video will tackle how each of us finds meaning in our own life. Back when Leo Tolstoy was the talk of the town in the literary world, he hit rock bottom in a big way. He was depressed. He felt like life was pointless because, in the grand scheme of things, we're all going to kick the bucket and fade into obscurity. But then Tolstoy had a change of heart and found solace in his faith, believing that life had some eternal and divine significance. Tolstoy's roller coaster of thoughts from gloom to spiritual awakening makes us think about a few things. One, does life needing meaning hinge on some supernatural stuff? Does death mess with the whole meaning of life deal? Can life even have a meaning in the first place? And if so, what does that even mean? So here we are going to check out some different ways folks approach these big questions about the meaning of life. But first, let's get to the bottom of the question. Lots of smarty pants scholars like to kick off their deep thinking about the meaning of life by wondering what the heck the question even means. When we talk about life, are we talking about all living things or just us humans? In this video, we are all about human life, but it's not a bad idea to ponder how other stuff can be meaningful or totally meaningless too. It's like shedding light on the different flavors of meaning. Sometimes we use the word meaning to dig into the origin or cause of something. For instance, if I walk into my house and it looks like a tornado hit it, I might ask, what's the meaning of this chaos? Similarly, we might get all curious about where life came from or how it got started. Our beginnings can drop some hints about other meanings, like why we are here or what we are supposed to do. We also toss around meaning to talk about how much something matters or how valuable it is. Something can be valuable in all sorts of ways, like being useful, being super useful, making us happy, or teaching us something new. On the flip side, you might call something meaningless if it is just plain pointless or doesn't matter at all. Then there is the idea of meaning as a thing's purpose or reason for existing. Life might have some big overarching purpose like being part of a master plan, or maybe it's just freestyling without a clear purpose. Heck, maybe we can even give our own lives a purpose that they didn't have before. But here is the kicker. Even if there is some divine plan in the work, it might not always satisfy our hunger for meaning. Imagine our creator made us to be snacks for super smart aliens who are on their way to chow down on us. We'd probably have a thing or two to say about that not being the most meaningful gig for us humans. We might prefer our life story to be a bit more epic than a side dish on an alien menu. And guess what? A thing's meaning can also be its story. The meaning of life could be the true tale of where life came from and why it matters. In that sense, life can't really be meaningless, but the story it tells might be a bummer or a total page turner. When folks like Tolstoy start saying life is meaningless, they're kind of saying the real story of life isn't all that great. So here's a quick list of stuff about life that could make someone tell a not so happy story. Wars, poverty, getting sick, natural disasters, addiction troubles, people getting treated unfairly, losing loved ones, or pollution messing up the joint. Life has got its ups and downs, that's for sure. So then there are some people, there's this crew called the Supernaturalists, and they are all about saying that life is all wrapped up in some divine stuff. Take the Abrahamic religions, for example, from their point of view, life is a real gem because everything in God's creation is an okay. Our job to show some love to God and give Him a high five by living our best life. We are like pieces of a big puzzle that is super important and lasts forever. It's all part of God's grand plan. But hold on, things get a bit tricky in our time. See, a bunch of folks these days aren't buying the old school religious answers anymore. The phrase, the meaning of life, only started getting thrown around in the last couple of centuries. Yes, and that is when science started getting all fancy, especially with this thing called evolution. It got a lot of people wondering if life is just a random act of nature instead of some fancy design by a supernatural being. So figuring out what life is all about can be a real head scratcher for those who aren't on board with the whole religious deal. Now, nihilistic view. There is this gang called the Nihilists, and they're all about saying life doesn't really have much of a positive meaning when you add it all up. Nihilism usually pops up when people are feeling kind of down and out about the whole religious thing. They're like, if life isn't kick-started by some big divine plan, then what's the point? Now, some folks try to argue back, saying life can have a lasting impact without needing a divine kickstart. They're talking about our cultural footprint, the stuff we leave behind for future generations to enjoy. But the nihilists, they aren't buying it. They're like, look, when you zoom out and see the big picture of the universe, we are just tiny specks. And a lot of the time, we are not even all that happy. So what's the point? Even our most important cultural heroes and achievements, they'll probably disappear someday when our species bites the dust and the solar system throws in the towel. You've got these folks called naturalists, and they're all about finding the meaning of life right here in our earthly adventures. They are like, even if life hasn't got some supernatural oomph, it can still be pretty darn significant. So they're not buying into the whole life is pointless thing like the nihilists. Some naturalists say, hey, human life has got some objectively awesome stuff like our smarts, our sense of right and wrong, and our creative talent. Maybe the meaning of life is to grow these skills and put them to good use. But hold up, there's another group of naturalists, the subjectivists. They're all about saying life doesn't come with a present meaning. You gotta make it yourself by living for something that you personally care about. It's like saying you do you, find what's important to you, and that's the meaning you create. Now, not everyone is on board with the naturalist train, right? Critics, including the nihilists and the supernaturalists, are like, y'all are just fooling yourselves. What you call meaning is basically a distraction from the fact that life might not have some big cosmic importance. They're asking why bother with personal growth and good deeds if we're all going to kick the bucket eventually. But the naturalists fire back, saying, the point is how these things make our lives and relationships better right now, not some far off future that doesn't even exist. Feeling bummed because we're not cosmic VIPs or MVPs might just be a big ego trip we need to get over. Some even wonder if living forever would get old after a while. Limited time might be what makes our experiences so dang precious. Yes. Now sure, this outlook does mean that death can sometimes snatch away our chance at more meaning, especially death is untimely. But it doesn't ease the meaningfulness of what we've already done and experienced. It doesn't erase it. And for the big debate about whether death is a bummer for the person who dies, well, that's a whole other can of worms. We'll leave it for some other time. So, all right, folks, let's wrap this up with a quirky story from Douglas Adams, The Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy. There's this supercomputer called Deep Thought, and it is tasked with cracking the code on the meaning of life, the universe, and everything. After grinding away for a whopping 7.5 million years, Deep Thought spits out the answer. You know what it is? It's a plain 42. 4-2. Now, deep thought isn't just stopping there. It's like, I think the real issue here is that y'all never really figured out what the question even is. Now, it's not just humor, but Adams might be onto something by tossing in a bit of humor. Plus, when you consider all the different meanings of meaning, maybe there isn't just one question to ask and one right answer to find. Tolstoy's Crisis as example reminds us that feeling like life has got no point can really mess with our heads and even put us in a tough spot. But here's the kicker. Even when we are in the darkest of time, keeping the hunt alive for meaning might just be one of the most meaningful things we do. Then there's this legendary psychiatrist dude, Viktor Frankl. You all know him, have heard of him. So someone in his class once asked him to sum up the meaning of his own life in one sentence. So he jots down his answer and asks the students to guess what he wrote. His students guessed. One student wrote that your life that you wrote, Viktor Frankl wrote that your life is all about helping others find their own meaning. And Frankl is like, bingo, those are the exact words I put down. Pretty neat, right? So maybe life is all about helping others find their meaning, but it's for you to figure it out for yourself. Thank you very much. See you next time.